We've got
All right, we'll call the K-12 Education Committee to order. Members, make sure that you are logged in, and if we would just open up the board and go ahead and take the roll. Trying to get mine. All right, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 members present.
All right, thank you. Members, any personal orders before we begin? All right, seeing none, we'll say item number 2 for right now has been taken off notice, and that brings us to the other item on the calendar, which is item number 1, House Bill 187 by Representative Mayberry. Do I have a motion? Properly motion. Representative Mayberry, you are recognized on House Bill 187.
You either go here or you can go down there. That's your choice.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Be easy on me. This is my first time ever doing this, and I, for some reason, decided not to let somebody model it for me and just kind of jump in. So I'll start off here.
Chairman's messing with the mic.
Not on purpose. I'm sorry.
I don't know if I believe that or not,
but go ahead. You're recognized again.
This bill will make government work better by updating the comptroller's reporting requirements for the Literacy Success Act to provide a more thorough review of the program. Current law requires the Comptroller's Office of Research and Education Accountability to review the Literacy Success Act and the foundational literacy skills plans and report its findings to the General Assembly every year. This legislation would change the recording frequency from every year to every 3 years, which would allow OREA to conduct a more thorough analysis of the LSA and FLSPs. With additional time between report periods, OREA could identify districts where students' reading proficiencies has improved and conduct interviews and surveys and determine which interventions are making the biggest positive impact for students' abilities to read proficiently.
All right, members, you have heard the explanation of the bill. We already have Representative McKenzie was down for a question. So Representative McKenzie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the sponsor, you know, when we implemented this program, which I supported and which I voted for, that was one of the main reasons, is that we're going to get data. We're going to understand, because as everyone knows, that the third grade's pivotal, there's other pivotal points during our children's educational process, and that we were going to get data to make changes. That was a big seller of this, that we're going to spend the money and take the time. And in your introduction, you said that changing it to every 3 years is going to allow us to improve the system. I'm trying to and make interventions. Why wouldn't we be able to do that on an annual basis?
Representative Mayberry.
I appreciate the question. Can I invite one of the members from the Comptroller's Office if they want to come in and speak to that?
Members, we do have the some Comptroller representatives on the list. So without objection, we'll welcome them up to the table there. And without objection, we will go out of session and have the Comptroller answer any questions. We are out of session. And if you would, just for the record, please state your name and who you represent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Mumpower, Comptroller, and thank you, Representative McKenzie, for the question. But first, thank you to Representative Mayberry for making a Comptroller bill your first bill. I appreciate it very much. To get to the question, I would say that we have performed this study every year since the original legislation passed. However, one thing we find is that allowing it to be done every 3 years would provide better data in terms of being able to recognize trends and gather more data over time to produce a report that would actually be more meaningful for the General Assembly.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for coming today to speak to this bill. I guess my still have concerns that was the selling point. Well, one of the selling points. Again, several great things about this legislation and this investment, and that's the key that I'm concerned with, is that we're making major investments. And my concern with what your answer is in 3 years, those students at year one aren't getting the intervention, the data. They're not able to benefit from this data because it's 3 years old. And as you know, from grades 3 through 6, that's a huge learning curve that we're counting on. So if our students aren't getting, hey, in the 3rd grade, you missed out on this key fundamental learning concept and you picked up on it, those 6th graders are now in trouble. So if it's 3 to 4 or 4 to 5, we can make those interventions. And again, if it's a funding issue, I could see it, but from a foundational standpoint, I guess I'm trying to understand, what about those children that are not benefiting from what we're doing today?
Thank you very much. And again, what I can tell you, in that we have produced a report already multiple times, we think we'll be able to provide you better information with the report once every 3 years.
Members, any other questions? Representative Hakeem?
Oh, am I on? Oh, okay. Comptroller Mumpower, thank you, sir. Why wouldn't we be able, instead of waiting, I say 3 years for information, to be able to, as far as intervention is concerned, we'll say 6 months in, taking a look at it, 1 year in, taking a look at it. If you want to do it 3 years, yeah, but I think there has to be some action taking place during that 3-year process, looking at where the young people are and what intervention needs to be had. And so it gives me great pause and concern also. It sounds like we're going to look at this every 3 years, but why isn't there an opportunity for intervention prior to the 3-year process?
Thank you very much for the question. And you're really getting into questions for me that the comptroller's office is not involved in, about management of the program, and that's not where we are.
And I will just jump in there. I do think that one of the things that this data is going to be available, if I'm not mistaken. I do think that the Department of Education is going to have some of this data available for dissemination and for us to be able to have access to. It's just not going to be compiled by the comptroller except every 3 years. So it's not like that this data won't be there. I think it's going to be there for us to access and be able to see that answer the questions that you're having. It'll just have a little bit more time to be disseminated by the comptroller's office, if I stated that correctly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is correct. I think that's a very good summary of it. We're not involved in the management of the program. And you, as a member of the General Assembly or the Department of Education, can act at any point in time without, a compilation of this data. And, I think anytime that you have reporting, you want to see trend lines and things like that. And really, the frequency with which the report's delivered right now don't deliver meaningful trends. And I think, extrapolating this out over a little bit more time will actually prove more helpful to you.
Representative Hakeem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you spoke of how that information is available to us. Would we be able to request, not of the comptroller, but the Education Department, to give us information, we'll say 3 months in, 6 months in, 9 months in, so that we're not waiting, so to speak, for 3 years to hopefully have a positive impact on the manner in which the young people are progressing?
Me?
I'm trying to get a little bit of a thumbs up or thumbs down from the department. It looks like a thumbs up from the Department of Education. That would be something that would be feasible to request and to attain.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Chairman
Mr.
White.
Mumpower.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. And I do appreciate and I do understand why. Anytime you're collecting data on an annual basis, but when you're compiling a report to give you more of the long-term trend of what is actually going on, it makes more sense to me that you would not do that on an annual because you got such a short window there. I used to think a year was a long time. I no longer do that. But having a complete report. Now we're still going to know the data. We can inquire on the data, but when it goes to the comptroller, the OREA to compile a report, then I understand the long-term trend. So I am supportive of this. The second reason I'm supportive is because your last name is Mayberry, and anything with Mayberry in it, I support.
Representative Slater was next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for being here, Comptroller. And some of the statements that I was going to make have already been made by by both chairmen. But this doesn't mean that there won't be data available at the state level for policymakers or for LEAs who receive the data when they get the test results back. And so this doesn't prevent any policy or any practical changes at the local level as well. And then I'd like to just share, since the comptroller's here, how pleasantly surprised I was when I got to the legislature and the work that OREA does when it comes to the reports that we receive. It is extremely helpful for policymakers, especially in the education space. And I don't see any this change going from a one-year report to a three-year report hindering any policy level decisions that we would make. In fact, I think that it actually will help and enhance that because we will be able to look at trends. And in education, those trends are important. It doesn't take away the LEA's ability to respond if needed, or at the state level with the information that we'll have from the department. So thank you so much for this bill from the Comptroller's office and from the sponsor. Thank you.
And in
Comptroller, go ahead.
response to that, if I thank you very much first, but let me say again, what we're talking about here is simply a compilation of data over time. So the data is available every day. We just compile it every so often. But one thing to Representative Slater's point that I'll point out too is this committee, the subcommittee and the education committee at large is a big user and a big requester of our research services. And so by changing this to once every 3 years instead of every year, that will allow us a little more capacity for whatever it is you'd like next. Because I already know there are multiple requests we've received this year for new studies from this committee. And so it will broaden our capacity to serve.
All right. Representative McKenzie, you were on the list next. Did you have a question for the comptroller? You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, and appreciate all those answers and the feedback, especially from my chairman, and the commitment. I'll put them on the spot and say the commitment from the Department of Energy, because I think this gets to my concern, and you're absolutely right. Every comptroller report that I've had has just been it's been a very thoughtful and detailed report, which is extremely valuable. So I can definitely get behind this bill, and I appreciate you saying that the bandwidth is open up, because I've got a couple of bills out there too, because your organization does a good job. So thank you.
Representative Hakeem, do you have another question or follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I too would like to thank you for all the work that you and your department does. We greatly appreciate it. But I will say, Mr. Chairman, that we want to get with the department. And see, I want more than just what's being said to me about we can get information 3 months, 6 months, have a view or perspective on it. So we will be in touch with you on that. Thank you. All right.
All right, members, any other questions? Oh, Comptroller?
I think it's relevant for me to point out that Jack Powers is not only a handsome man, but in the trend of myself and the chairman, but he is also a comptroller alumni. He used to work in OREA before he went to the Department of Education. So he should be very well versed in what you're looking for.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, without objection, we will go back into session. And I did have a couple of members down for some questions on the bill if they were still wanting to be recognized. Chairman White, did you want to be on the bill? All right. And Representative Slater? All right. If there's no other questions for the sponsor, we will be set to vote. All right. Without objections, we'll go ahead and open up the board for a vote. You'll see it on there. Please select yes or no or present not voting. All right. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes, 0 noes.
All right. Bill passes on to full education. Members, that completes our calendar. Without objection, we will stand adjourned till next Tuesday morning.